All right, so here we are, Barb. We're online with Xandy Peters. This is so exciting.
Very exciting. Hi, Sandy. How are you?
I'm okay. I've been sick for a few days, and I think I actually caught the virus. And so I am feeling better, breathing better, and still unable to get a test for it. But I've come through it and not needed extra care, which is lucky.
Yes.
And I feel much better now.
Oh, we're really glad to hear that. Yeah.
It's really terrible. You know, like so many people are getting really, really sick with this. So we're happy to hear that you've pulled through and managed to come out on the other side well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is difficult about it is that I know other teachers who are at an event with me also came down with like a little bit of a cold afterwards and kind of a funky cold. And so it looks like it spread amongst some of us at a knitting event. And that's why we're all staying home, which gives us all time to knit, right?
Right.
That's right. Yeah, and design and do things like that that you get time to do on a regular day.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And so we'll just explain that, Barb, you're at the shop right now and it's completely empty. You're just filling some online orders.
Yes. Can you see all the baskets behind me?
Yes. That's good. And I'm at home, in my kitchen table recording studio. So yeah, it is a time that we're finding that, the business of designing, the business of going to knitting events, and the business of selling yarn and supporting our customers has really changed. And we're working really fast to kind of adapt to this new reality we're in. Hey?
Yeah.
We're really excited about the classes that you're going to be teaching at the Knit for Fun retreat, Xandy.
I'm excited. I'm excited too, because it's going to be so amazing when we all can get out. I am mostly a stay-at-home type of person, but I really do miss the opportunity to travel to knitting events because they're so much fun. And I am so excited that in August this is going to be my first international teaching experience. And I don't totally count Canada as international because we share such a big border. And we share a language, even if we're not 100% culturally the same. It's a place that I do love to visit. So it's very exciting to have the opportunity to do this. And I think everyone will be so ready.
Yes. That's so true. Yeah. Yeah. So, why don't you tell us about what's the first class that comes to mind when you think about the Knit for Fun retreat?
Well, I think the first class that comes to mind is obviously the Fox Paws class. A lot of people know who I am just because of that pattern. Before that pattern, I was not teaching at anywhere. It kind of made things happen for me. So I want to show you what it looks like. I have two of them next to me, actually. Here's one.
Oh,
wow!
And this is the original. Oops, it's messing with my exposure. I'll put it on for a second. So the Fox Paws pattern is really fun to do because it's kind of like a puzzle and a challenge. So I love teaching the class because the way that it's taught, I actually don't like to assume that anyone knows the technique when they come in. The technique that I use to create the Fox Paws is called stacked stitches. And stacked stitches are a way of creating extreme waves in something. Let me pull up my next Fox Paws here to show you. Here's my brights. So you can see these extreme waves in the row where it's kind of like a chevron, but it's got all these lobes coming off of it, making a really intricate pattern. And so in order to teach that technique, it's something that I developed myself 5 years ago. I don't expect anyone to have any background in it. So we work our way all the way up from like just the components all the way up, which means that if you're a beginner knitter and all you've done is like knit, purl, increase, decrease, and you can read a pattern, it's still an okay class, because if you're an advanced knitter, you're not going to know what's going on either. So I love teaching that class. It's so much fun. And it also gives us time, because it's a longer time period. It gives us time to also work on, color. Obviously, the color, it takes color beautifully, and it can look different. So it's a really versatile pattern in that way, and that gives us some time to play with it. The second class, though, that comes to mind is the Intro to Stacked Stitches, which is essentially the same as the first part of our Fox Paws class, because it is a shorter class. And it's a shorter class, and we do some smaller projects. So this is an example of the type of color work that you can create with the stacked stitches. This is not as intricate as the Fox Paws. I know it's not as exciting. Everyone wants to make the Fox Paws, but there's a lot of fun stuff to do. And this is just like the basic stitch. And you could totally imagine this in the yoke of a sweater, right?
Yes.
And I made it into pants. That's just me. Like, sweater, no way. Pants are better. Now I kind of wish I had a sweater instead of spending 2 years making a pair of very warm pants. But maybe in Canada they'd come in handy more because you're a bit more north than I am.
Definitely.
So in the Intro to Stacks class, we're really working on a simpler motif, but we learn you saw the other motif, it was like an interlocking, okay? We have our little lobes here. It actually goes this way. We have our little lobes here, and they like go up, that's the increase, and then down, that's the decrease. So we do that motif in the class, and we can put that together to make projects like this.
Wow. That's beautiful.
So in this shawl, you can see that it's really the same motif. It's just the up and the down, the increase and the decrease interlocking. But I've added some lace and short rows here and some shaping. Okay, so there's shaping. But this is something that when you come out of the class, not only are you ready to do it, but you've already practiced all of the stitch work in here once. So this I like. This is a new-ish pattern that I developed just as like a follow-up to that class. And I like the intro class because, it gives people some time to explore. We do some fun stuff. I show you what it looks like when you mess things up. There's an error in this shawl. It's a very forgiving stitch. You can't really notice it. But when you really mess things up, you get all these weird lumps and bumps. And in our intro class, because we're not working on a project, to get lumps and bumps is not always a bad thing. It can be really fun. So we have time to play around with the stitch in that class. I love that class. I want to dispel a myth here because there's a lot of people say that Fox Paws is hard. And I don't like the word hard. I don't like the word difficult for it. It's complex. And with any technique that you're learning, if you start with it's not the most complex, but if you start with a complex pattern, it's going to be a lot harder because that's the one that's like sensational and everyone wants to do it. The general, I don't know, the word on the street, one could say, is that it's difficult to do the technique. The technique itself, though, is not much harder than learning anything else that's new. It's just that people like to start with the hard pattern. So if you start with the easier motif, which when I started designing these patterns, I actually ranked them by skill level and published them in that order. So like, if you start with something easier, it will be easier. I have with me the pattern that I published today. This is the Petal Scarf. It's like a flat version of something that I did before, a petal cowl. And so it's got a stack stitch motif and self-striping yarn. And here you can see it a little better.
Wow.
There. This is one of those earth yarns.
Right.
And so there's no color breaks in the yarn. This pattern is a little bit easier than the fox paws pattern. There are some weird things in it. They're unfamiliar, but it's not that bad. And you can start with this scarf has only like 4 repeats across. So it's a very short row. And if you mess up, you can take it out. But I mean, you're learning something new, and in a class environment, it's usually not a problem for people. And so I don't think at this point there's anything I can do to get rid of the reputation of designing the most complex patterns ever, it's not me. The most complex patterns ever are definitely like Kieran Foley or Debbie New, right? But it's actually a lot easier when you start from, the practices and go through it. So usually people have success in class.
Well, I think that's kind of why we're bringing you is to help demystify the myth that it's hard. Because, our customers are always looking for some project that is stellar. They want something really, really special. So I think people who want that will spend the time to learn how to do it, right? So I really, we're really kind of excited about having you come because you're going to be able to demystify fox paws for us. You did it for Cynthia and I when we came to your class. So if you can do it for us, you can do it for everybody.
I think that well, first of all, I'm glad that you enjoyed the class and that you got something out of it. But I also want to say my patterns aren't the only patterns that use this technique. So once you know it, there are other designers who use it. I'm always encouraging other designers to try it out for that reason. You shouldn't just be stuck with my stuff. They have variations on it, but once you get the concept of how it works, it actually makes a lot of things easier. And you can use the stitch for shaping in garments. You can use it for all sorts of things. And so that's why it's kind of a fun class, because it is like a relatively new technique. I did look for prior uses when I was publishing, and I leave room for the fact that someone may have done it before. Like, it's knitting, it's folk knowledge. Not all of it is written down, but it's one of those things that you can use for a lot of stuff and you can really explore. So if you're an adventurous knitter, or you're one of those people who just loves to like swatch different patterns and learn new things and not necessarily do a project, there's so much new to explore once you open up this part of thinking. I think I'm also teaching center out knitting.
You are? Yeah. Have you got some things to show us for that one?
Well, I do, because when I said like you can explore, when I said that you can explore different stack stitches in like garments and stuff and maybe use them for shaping, right here, my example that I have out for center out knitting we're not going to do this exact thing in class because I don't assume everyone in that class knows stack stitches, but we have this.
Wow.
I'll send a picture of that one.
Yeah.
We have this shawl here, and it's got an almond in the middle, and I call it the oscillating almond because it's striped. But you can see the shaping here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Those are little stacked stitches that make the almond shape, which is fun.
Yeah.
But it also uses like a Judy's Magic cast on at the center. It's invisible, like it's Judy's Magic cast on, so like you can't see it. It's just hiding. It's invisible. It's magic. That's why she calls it magic. And I've also, so this is a way that you can use your stacks with one of the other techniques, but it's also like we're going to learn Judy's Magic cast on in the class. If you know it already, cool. I teach it a little bit differently. If you don't know it already, amazing. We're going to learn it. If you can't get it in the class, because it's great for center out stuff where, you know, it's thin lace yarn, so you can see if there's a seam down the middle. But if you can't, if you don't need it to be perfect, I teach another oblong cast on for a center out thing. This is a rejected sample. I dyed the yarn myself and it didn't come out so nicely. So right in here, this is called the Surfboard shawl, scarf, whatever, a surfboard, and it's got a cast on at the center.
That's very cool. I love the colors of that, Xandy.
It's also, well, I had one, the colors are nice, but I wanted them to be more neon because it's like a surfer, and I was going for like 90s, like neon beachwear, but it's also got a stack stitch here to do the increase, and it's got short rows in it, but it's cast on at the center, and it's cast on using a super easy method that's an alternative to Judy's Magic cast on. And it's not the Turkish thing where you wrap it around the needles. That gives me a lot of trouble because of the tension. It's a different method. So we cover something like 2 different levels of like, how much do you care about the project having a beautiful center cast on, or do you want to just get going because maybe like it's not going to show, right? It's garter stitch. It's not going to show. We also cover like an actual like center point, like casting on from a center point instead of a center line. Actually, in the class, I always cover the center point first because it's such a popular thing to do. This is another one of my dog's blankets, and don't judge me, it's Brooklyn tweed. I didn't buy it for her, it's scraps. So here we go. Each one of these triangles in it is cast on from a center point and knit, and they were seamed together. Okay, so if we look at it from back here,
that's beautiful.
You can see each triangle.
That's absolutely gorgeous, Xandy.
And the center points. Yeah, I still don't like have a pattern for this, but in the class we have the instructions for the triangle block, which is cool because equilateral triangles, I don't know where you find them in knitting that much. It's a fun shape. But the cast-ons are very neat in the center, so we work on that. And that's great. And in that part of the class, it's really not about a specific project. I really like when students show up and they have either a question about a certain thing that they want to do, or they have a project in mind. But it's also fun if you don't, because we go over things like, so I mentioned, this is in the handout, it's an equilateral triangle. We also cover like, it's not just like the center out cast-ons. It's also how to shape things, right? It's not top down. We are not making cups. We're not making hats. We're not making toe-up socks. We're making stuff from the center out. So it's like tablecloths, shawls, and anything flat, right? So we talk about the shaping of how to get a flat shape and how to get like an equilateral triangle, how to get a square, how to get like a swirly shape in the increases, how to get corners, that go up, and how to get corners that are convex so you can make stars. We talk about all that stuff in the class so that you leave with an understanding of like how to take maybe a triangular shawl and make it into a rectangle from the center out. So we don't necessarily cover all of that in the class. We cover whatever you ask about. We do always do shaping, but like if you come in with a chart of a triangular shawl, right? And you say like, this needs to be rectangular. That's a great case study to do in class, you know? So maybe we'll do that. I love the class because it's very open-ended like that. And we can either go deep into technique, right? Or we can go deep into construction.
Very
Depends
cool.
on who comes.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And then you've also got color theory for fiber artists, Xandy. Tell us a bit about that.
I mean, I've shown you a few things here involving color. Most of my patterns are color work. When I'm picking colors, I've been told that I stand in front of a wall and I go like this in public knitting stores, because I like to go to stores, because stores, I'm sure you'll agree, are a really important part of finding the right yarns if they're in person. So I pick from like my gut. And by teaching color theory as something that is just a vocabulary, color theory is a science. It's not really about like, there's color theory for artists, but it's not an art. It's the color choices that are the art. So like, I like to teach how, for example, the same color can look really different next to two neighbors. And why is that? Well, has to do with how your eyes work, but how do we like experiment and find the right thing? So like before the class, I send out homework, which is coloring pages and knitting or crocheting some stripes or embroidering. Or have we decided that this is open to embroiderers, weavers, and quilters as well? Because if it's a mixed, there's always, I mean, fiber people do stuff. So like you bring in a little piece and we talk about them. The first part of the class is learning that vocabulary to talk about them. And what we learn when we see all of our pieces on the table that we brought in for homework, you know, I'm not asking anyone to bring in something perfect. You don't have to like what you bring in. We just need examples to talk about. Because the advantage of the group is that we get time to see what we like, see what we don't like. Sometimes we like what someone else has done. And we can learn from that and say, well, how did they do that? I would need to do that. But there's no formula. So getting all those perspectives on what people think is like our starting point. And then we talk about like, why is it so hard to do this one thing when like I pull a yarn out and then I get it home from the store and they're in a group and like I just was so focused on that one color that I love that nothing goes with it that I picked. And like, how do I fix that problem?
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's really not about picking colors to make something that looks one way. It's about how to find the colors that you like and how to make sure that when you do a project, the colors that you've picked are I can't say best, but they're the best that you can, they're the best that you can find, the best combination that you can find, instead of settling for something where something's just bothering you a little bit, you know, and how to make that successful. I think that's something that, because I knit so many samples, you know, I try to get it right on the first time.
Yeah.
And you can see it with my fox paws. I mean, we also talk about how if you've got a pattern that you like, recoloring it really changes things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two different people.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing to explore with our knitting or crochet.
Do you also maybe take a look at using variegated yarns with solid yarns in that class?
If people bring them in, I talk about all the different kinds of yarn and like the dye processes and luster and stuff of the fiber, but we go over it if people bring it in. We also one of the things that we talk about with variegated yarns is what kind of patterns to put with them, to put them into.
Right.
And like the difference between a variegated and a speckled yarn and a marled yarn, and they all have different properties, but that's why so the homework is to like fill in some pages and to do a stripey swatch, which is stripes, garter stitch stripes. Change the yarn whenever you feel like it, just make some stripes, right? You don't have to like the yarn. But if you have a hard to use yarn, like people bring in a lot of novelty yarn and they're like, this is crazy, but I love my swatch with this novelty yarn that I haven't been able to use that I bought in the 90s. That's one thing that we've all done, made that mistake. And so we talk about that. And sometimes because we're working on it as a not project, it frees you up to discover that you actually are okay with some things that can look a little bit crazy. And you need to control them. So variegated yarns are definitely welcome. I mean, embroiderers. I had one class where an embroiderer brought in a sampler with the variegated yarn used in all different ways. And the class loved seeing how much a stitch, even though it wasn't knit or crochet, can affect how that's used. So we have all different things that we cover. But mostly we work on like talking about color in a way that allows us to express what we want. So if we go into our yarn store, we can express it to ourselves. We have the vocabulary to say, to articulate that feeling to ourselves, and then to articulate that feeling of what we want to the shop owner so that they can help us find what we need.
That's perfect.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's super fun. And it's really, I don't know if I want to say this word because, you want to fill the class. It's critique based, which is, critique is a positive word. It's not a mean critique. We don't allow mean critiques. So it ends up as kind of a strangely, interestingly, it ends up as a team building exercise. So by the end of class, because we've talked about our projects and we've all put input, you come out kind of as like a friendly group. When someone brings in a project, I say bring in a project that you liked or disliked. And when people bring in something that they disliked, but someone else is like, I love that and I would wear it. It's so amazing. The positive, because, everyone's different.
Yeah.
So.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, that's really good.
And I'm excited because I think at a retreat like this, it is more of a group thing. There are going to be people who know each other there already, but it really brings in the people who are kind of like out of the group, haven't been to one before. If you're apprehensive about talking to people, it's a controlled environment where you're not forced to talk. You never have to, but you get to meet people. You get to meet people in the context of their work, not like meet people and like talk about your lives. You get to meet their knitting.
We've had several people who didn't know each other at the beginning of the retreat, who now, because we've had this retreat 2 or 3 times, now they've become best friends. I see them on Instagram, and it's all about the knitting or the crochet. Really, it's not about what they do for a living or who they are. It's all about that common interest.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's so amazing, and that's one of the things that I miss because I had a packed March and all of my events were canceled. I really miss going out and seeing people in different parts of the country, seeing people who somehow go to all the events as attendees. But like, I think sometimes, sometimes we have like knitting groups at home. Our knitting groups at home sometimes are either they're good or bad. My knitting group is amazing. I don't go very often anymore, and I'm not going now because it's not running. But it's super diverse in terms of like people's crafts and their backgrounds. So like people bring what they do. It's not a knitting group, it's called Threads. So it's like crochet, embroidery, needlepoint. The woman who runs it does like Native American beading, and she makes moccasins, which is awesome. Like it's spinning if you want to. And like we make these connections, but in some areas of the country, in some areas of the world, people don't have a knitting group that they can go to like that. And these retreats are an amazing way to meet people. And now that we have this ability to use Zoom, your friends from the retreats can become your Zoom buddies. You can have your own virtual knitting group and avoid whatever weirdness is around you. Because I've heard things. I'm sure that your shop is like, I've heard good things about your shop totally all the time. And I'm not saying that, like, like I've heard good things about your shop, but sometimes shops can be really weird and not welcoming to people. So these retreats give you a way to get away if you don't like your local people, and you get to meet new friends and just kind of like have something in common with someone who's really different from you.
That's right. And it's a great way to see different places too. Barb and I have been to a couple of Ann Bud's Knit for Fun retreats, and she holds them in what I think of as unusual places, but there's a good portion of the retreat that's about seeing the community that you're going into. And so I know Cindy and Anne try to arrange excursions outside of the event so that people can come early or stay longer and get to know the community that they're going to visit as well, which I think is really good too. Because sometimes as knitters, we tend to hole up in the classroom and, get busy with our stuff and not want to go outside and explore. And that's kind of part of the retreat too.
Mm-hmm. Are any of these events known yet? Is there something specific that they've planned that's exciting?
Yeah. So Cindy had arranged, for after the retreat to do some things like having a dye workshop with a local indie dyer here in Alberta named Carolyn Sommerfeld. She dyes for a company called Ancient Arts.
Wait, what? What? Okay. So when I get my plane ticket, I'm going to have to plan for that because Carolyn is the best. She's so nice.
Yes.
She's so nice. The class that you took with me used her yarn in the original project.
Ah, right.
And I have a sweater downstairs that I just got back a sample using her yarn. I love her stuff. I'm so excited. That's so cool. I didn't realize that she was based in Edmonton. I thought she was further west.
She's not. She's in Calgary, so she's further south. Mm-hmm.
She's
so I don't know how.
Calgary?
See.
That's right. She lives in Calgary, just a little bit south of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have her yarn out waiting to do stuff too. So maybe I'll do a project.
We're so lucky, Xandy. We're really good friends with Carolyn and her husband, Dan, and we get to see them quite often. They also dye yarn for us. They make a line of hockey yarn. Edmonton's kind of known for.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's Carolyn is the one who dyes it for us, and she's just amazing as a dyer. We're so thrilled that Cindy connected with her because we think personally she's one of the best dye artists going.
One of the things that I love about her yarn is the consistency between batches and the attention to consistency between batches. A lot of indie dyers are like, there's nothing wrong with being a free spirit and being an artist, but like there are some that only do like one-offs, and she's like the opposite. She's she does limited edition stuff, but she's really good at doing that like consistent color. I've never had to alternate skeins in a project of hers because she hits it, like she hits that color. Maybe I actually used her yarn as an example in my color class, a project that I did her yarn as an example in the color class. Maybe I should get in contact with her and see if she wants to. You have a bunch of her yarn in the shop. Maybe we could bring some real life examples of that color.
She's also going to be in the marketplace. So
Cool.
She's going to be one of the vendors that's coming to the marketplace. So absolutely get in touch with her and let her know what you'd like, because she'll bring whatever it is that you would like to do.
Yeah, you know what? I don't have a specific, that changes how I'm planning my schedule right now for designs. I have some of her yarn that's like the mohair blend. I think I also have some of her Lasco yarn to try, which is cool.
Isn't that, have you used it yet?
No, I have some, like, I just think my year was bad. I didn't do much design. And then since I've gotten back into designing, I've had shows and then a month-long battle with a fever. So well, just I haven't been on top of it, but it's like in my list of things to do for fall. Now it's going to move up to August. I haven't swatched in the Lasco though.
Well, just a warning for you. When you get that on your needles, you're not going to want to do anything else.
So I swatched in, I can't remember the name of one of the bases. I have it. It's a weird, cool pattern, but I wasn't sure what to do with it. But she has a base that's like tan, and it's dyed on top of the natural tan color.
That's the Lasco.
Is that the Lasco?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So that's what's on my needles. And it knits up so nicely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We carry it in two weights. We have a fine and a worsted weight.
What? Mm-hmm. I didn't go to TNNA to see that. So,
well, wait till you get here in August. We're going to have a great selection of that.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
Maybe we should send Xandy a skein of Hat Trick too.
Yes, that would be fun to play with.
What is that? Is that an ancient arts yarn?
Yes.
It's an RCY yarn. It's a River City Yarns yarn, but Carolyn dyes it for us, and she does it on her Socknito base, which is really nice.
So it's an Italian 80 merino 20 nylon, and it comes in big, huge skeins. So the skeins are 550 yards each. So you're getting a lot of patterning. You know, most of the yarns are variegated, but she does one for us called Touchdown. It's a football inspired yarn, and half the skein is one color and half the skein is another color.
Hold on. Wait, you live in Canada. Do you watch American football?
Well, we watch Canadian football.
There's Canada plays football?
Oh, yes. Canada plays football. And the Canadian teams are the ones that Caroline dyes for us.
But when I say American football, I mean like the not soccer one. I don't mean like in America. I mean like they play it. It's not.
So we play
like the one that's like rugby. You play
Go
that?
ahead, Cynthia.
No, we play. We do play a version. We play football just like you guys. The rules are a little bit different in how many downs you have to get and what the meters is. But it's the same ball, same type of game. Yeah.
I know nothing about
and
that kind of football. That is a game that I do not watch.
Yeah, that's okay. You're allowed. Do you watch hockey, Xandy?
I don't watch hockey. I was almost like, okay, so I live in a little town, right? But my elementary school was right across from a skating rink. And so every week we would skate until I was in 4th grade. And then in 5th and 6th grade, our winter sport was either figure skating or hockey. And I did not play the hockey because it's a private skating rink. My family didn't have a membership. So there were kids on that team who had the hockey membership. It's co-ed, right? Co-ed hockey, full contact. And I did not want to get involved with that kind of skill level because I would just be on my back the whole time or on my side or on my front or, yeah. It would not have been good. But as a result of this like skating rink, my town has produced a whole bunch of the specifically women's, because our town team is a co-ed team in the boys league. The women's Olympic hockey team, a bunch of them are from my little town, the U.S. hockey team. So when I was in school, we had a chance to meet the first women's hockey team who won the championship. And I got to touch the gold medal from Nagano for the hockey team. So like, I appreciate hockey as a sport.
There you go.
I mostly love the women's hockey because it's like a town pride thing. Our town team of like our adult team is called the Mother Puckers. And it's a big thing here, just here. And my boyfriend grew up with it because he was in Alaska, but I don't play.
All right. Well, we'll find a nice skein of hat trick to send to you, Xandy, and then you can play with it before you come. But I think we're going to have to sign off now because our time is up. So wanted to say thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning and for hanging out with us and telling us about the classes. We're super excited to have you come here to Edmonton in August.
I'm so excited, and I'm excited for these auxiliary events that people can sign up for. I'm excited to meet people. I'm excited that I'll be allowed out of my house. Also, I'm excited that there are going to be a bunch of students learning Foxpaws again in person, and that I'll get to see you guys again.
Yeah.
And to see the shop.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm excited to see your shop because it sounds amazing, and I've heard so many good things, probably from Carol in Sommerfeld. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to show what the classes are all about.
That's really good. Thank you for coming to Canada. We're really looking forward to that.
Anytime. Someone's like, come to Canada. I'm like, will we get poutine?
Poutine, yes. And we're working on Ukrainian food for you, Xandy.
Yes. Oh, yes. We talked about that. Yes.
Pierogies and cabbage rolls and lots of kubasa.
Yeah, pierogies, guanki, yes.
All right. Well, you have a great week, Xandy. And
you too. And I hope you had a good Easter if you celebrate, or whatever spring holiday, even though we're inside.
All right. Have a great week, everybody.
All right.